funny? Well, it was Jeremy Corbyn's big EU speech today, heavily trailed, I have to say, yesterday, particularly by the shadow Brexit Secretary Keir Starmer. But this was Labour changing course, changing position on a manifesto which I praised on this programme. I did. I said, wow, I'm impressed by this Jeremy Corbyn, who I'd always viewed to be a bit of a Marxist, which I wasn't, a bit of a hard leftist, never been quite my cup of tea, but on the big question of the UK governing itself, making its own laws, I'd kind of thought we'd been at one. And the Labour manifesto was very, very clear that whilst they sought close relations, pretty clear we would not be part of a single market or customs union. But today, a very, very big U-turn. Here was Jeremy Corbyn in action this morning.
We will remain close to the EU, that's obvious. Every country, whether it's Turkey, Switzerland or Norway, that is geographically close to the EU without being an EU member state, has some sort of close relationship with the EU. They're some more advantageous than others, and Britain will need a bespoke, negotiated relationship of its own. During the transition period, which was proposed by Labour in the first place, Labour would seek to remain in a customs union with the EU and within the single market. That means we would abide by the existing rules of both during transition. That is, so the government, businesses and workers only have to make one adjustment from the current situation to the final terms.
Now, this is all bedevilled with complexity, because I know that the vast majority of the population say customs union, single market, what is the difference? So I asked earlier on today Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, to explain the difference between the two.
The EU single market is the world's largest. It covers 500 million consumers, allowing for the free trade in goods, services, capital and people across Europe. It also includes countries outside the EU, namely Norway, Iceland and Liechtenstein. To its supporters, it ensures that Britain can trade without any tariffs or taxes across the European Union, which makes up 40% of our export market. But to its critics, the single market is protectionist and prevents countries from Asia and the Americas doing their own deals with Britain, independently of the European Union. Many Brexiteers also argue that if you look at current economic trends, Britain will be doing more business outside of Europe in years to come. Tying ourselves into the single market, they argue, does not future-proof our prosperity. Another reason many Brexiteers do not like the single market is that in order to be a member, countries have to sign up to EU-wide rules and regulations on everything from food standards to the number of hours you can work legally in 1 week. These measures go much further than what usually exists in a free trade zone. Now, in recent months, you will have heard a lot about the customs union. It's different from the single market in that it only covers goods once they have entered the European Union. So, for instance, if you're a computer wholesaler operating in Essex, you can import 1,500 iPads from China and sell them to individual retailers throughout the customs union. You will only have to pay an import tax once, and then you're free to sell them throughout the EU without paying additional tariffs. Now, this gets even more complicated if you're manufacturing a product in the UK. Say you're building a car in Stockport. The exhausts might be imported from China, but the windscreens might come from Germany. The car itself then may be destined for sale in Spain. If Britain remains within the customs union, there wouldn't be a problem. We would pay a tariff on the Chinese exhausts, nothing on the windscreens, and then sell the car in Spain without any bother. But if Britain was outside the customs union, there'd have to be a calculation by the Spanish authorities of importing the Chinese exhausts, and that would lead to higher costs, therefore making the cars made in Stockport less appealing to Spanish consumers. Hence why some Remainers claim that if Britain leaves the customs union, car manufacturers will just shrug their shoulders and move their assembly plants to a city inside the customs union. The other issue in all of this is the Northern Irish border, the UK's only land border. The Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has said that he wants a frictionless border, i.e. no checks. But that makes being outside the customs union very difficult, because obviously there'll be a need for checks on goods leaving Northern Ireland to ensure they do not contain parts brought in from outside the European Union. Corbyn today has sought to circumvent this problem by saying that in effect Britain should stay in the customs union. The price for that concession would be that we wouldn't be able to negotiate our own trade deals independently of the European Union. To Brexiteers, that's sacrilege. What's the point of leaving, they argue, if Britain can't find its own way in the world?
So there we are. There is the full technical explanation of what is the customs union, what is the single market. And I bet a few of you, having heard that, are perhaps just as confused as you were at the start. The whole thing is bedevilled with complexity. What does it really mean? Well, what it means is that if you want to buy an £80,000 Mercedes, Jeremy Corbyn is going to make sure that still costs £80,000 and not £88,000, which it would if we were to put a tariff on because we weren't part of a customs union. But if you're poor and you want to buy food or bras or shoes or clothes for your kids, you will go on paying 10 to 15% more than you necessarily need to, because the point of a customs union is it puts extra tariffs on goods that come in from outside the rest of the world. And the thing I find extraordinary in the speech, which, by the way, Brexit was a tiddly part of. This was a general election speech coming from Corbyn, a very left-wing general election speech coming from Corbyn. But the thing I find really bizarre about this is who's cheering Jeremy Corbyn tonight? Why, it's the big corporates. It's the CBI. And I haven't heard from Goldman Sachs, but I bet they're going, oh, Jeremy Corbyn tonight. Nothing that they've done today will do anything for those on the lowest incomes in this country. And I have to say that for a Labour leader who gave the impression they would be absolutely sincere to Brexit, I now very much doubt that. Keir Starmer said yesterday, that we will have to have a new treaty with Europe. So Brexit means we get rid of the current treaty. The Labour Party want us to have a new treaty. I do not think that is what the country voted for. 17.4 million people and more than 4 million people who voted Corbyn in June last year, I don't believe, want any of this. So, forgetting the very intricate technical details, because frankly, that's going to bore the pants off most of you. But does this feel and sound to you like Jeremy Corbyn is supporting or betraying the Brexit vote? And if you think it all sounds very positive, call me on 0345 6060 973. If you think he's a total sellout, then text to 84850, or maybe you've got something else, another solution to offer to this conundrum, in which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course, watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And I've got Mark from Hitchin on the line. He's a brand new caller to this show. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Nigel. Nigel, what I'd like to say is I think Corbyn's played a bit of a blinder here, both politically and with his speech. I mean, a lot of commentators have been moaning like hell that, you know, he hasn't said much while we've had all the information come out of the Conservative government. And to be honest, I think what he's done is taken a very good lesson from history from that well-known European Napoleon, who once said,
wow,
never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. And I think that's been an excellent piece of political timing. He's now created a policy which you could arguably say attracts everybody except the hard Brexiteers. It gives a port for the ship to go in for the Commons Brexiteers with their amendment. I mean, if you're a Brexiteer, you want to...
Mark, fine. I get... So what you're saying is that politically, in terms of helping to bring down Theresa May, he's played a blinder. But has he played a blinder for ordinary working families in Britain?
Well, hang on. No, I wouldn't say for bringing down Theresa May. What I was actually saying was if for the people who are supporting Brexit, yeah, for breakfast.
Very good. Yeah. You're not the first.
Yeah, I know. So for people who obviously want to see them commit to keep Brexit going, they've done that. They're not saying they're going to go back to the single market. They've effectively said if you want a soft Brexit, this is where you've got to be. They've also, as you've already mentioned, the CBI have got behind them. I know you had some meaningful words for that as well. I mean, even if you're a Remainer, but you've accepted that we've got to leave Brexit, we've got to leave through Brexit, that would seem to be where you need to go. I mean, to be quite honest, like I said, the only people who I can see not being attracted to that would be the hard Brexiteers.
All right, well, Mark, let me try a different line on you.
Okay.
Number one, being in the customs union or a customs union means, and I was on lunchtime television against Lisa Nandy, Labour MP, who clearly didn't have a Scooby-Doo how these concepts of customs unions works. But number one, we would not be able to negotiate our own deals with the rest of the world. That is a fact. That's how customs union works. And number two, Mark, we would not, if we're part of the customs union, be able to reduce tariffs from products coming in from all over the world, which actually, on things like shoes coming in that are made in Vietnam, on food that's coming in from Black Africa, on many of these things, there are eye-watering tariffs. We could, Mark, if we use Brexit to its full advantage, give those on the lowest incomes in this country a real step up the ladder.
Well, I mean, I do take your point, but equally, if you look at the government assessments, some of the poorest people in the poorest areas are going to have the hardest hit, whichever Brexit you go for. So I think that would, equally wipe out any benefit that you would see. Well,
the Treasury say that the economy could slump by 8%. There's a whole group of economists who say we could increase by 4%. And I've always argued, Mark, whatever my view on the future economic projections are, no one knows whether I'm right or wrong or whether you're right or wrong. What I do know, Mark, is that we voted in a referendum to leave the European Union. And if what the Labour Party are now getting us ready for is signing us up to a new treaty, isn't that entirely dishonest politics?
Oh, no, I don't think it's dishonest at all, Nigel. And I think you've also got to be very open with the British people. We have over 759 treaties, as I'm sure you well know, and I cannot see within the next few years that we're going to be able to renegotiate all of those. So even if we go for Brexit, even to stand still to get those 759 treaties plus into place, we simply don't have the manpower. Government doesn't have the manpower. Where is that going to leave us?
Well, we voted, Mark, on one treaty, the Treaty of Rome. We voted to leave it, and it seems that Corbyn and his mates want to get us back into a new kind of treaty. Mark, I thank you very much indeed for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 7:16. One of the reasons so many millions of Labour voters voted Brexit is because open-door immigration, net migration to Britain, running at up to 10 times its post-war average, had driven down wages, made it tough to get your kid into the local primary school, access to GP appointments, and all the rest of it. And in their manifesto last June, Labour said that we would take back control of our borders and end free movement. Today, Jeremy Corbyn said that leaving the European Union means free movement ends. I thought, this is interesting. Then he goes on to say this.
In contrast to the Prime Minister who said, if you believe you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere. We believe, in fact, that we can only fully achieve what we want to as citizens of Britain by also recognising we are citizens of the world.
There you go. Well, there you go. Citizens of the world. And he said he wouldn't want to live in a Britain where we scapegoated people that came in from outside, and we would not, with our EU negotiations, put arbitrary targets ahead of what was good economically. By which the Labour Party means good for big business, the corporates. I mean, quite bizarre, the position that we're in. Perfectly clear to me that if Labour got into power, absolutely nothing would change as far as open borders are concerned. There we go. I've said it. And if you think I'm wrong, you call 0345 6060 973. I believe this is the first step in Labour not just signing us up, if they were to win power, to a customs union. I believe they will also now sign us up to a single market. And it's remarkable that the party that stood traditionally for patriotic working class people is now a middle class London political party dominated by the Blairites that are there. And I have to say, given that over 4 million Labour voters voted Brexit in that referendum, I think this could actually cost him the next general election if we had a Conservative Party with some clear policies, particularly on the immigration issue. And I know that everyone says, Nigel, please don't talk about it. It's too awkward. It's too embarrassing. You know, you'll ruin our dinner party. But actually, out there in the country, people do care about it. My next caller is Teng from Durham. Teng, we've spoken before. You're a Labour man, aren't you?
Yes, I'm a Labour voter, and I'm a staunch Brexiteer. And
Yes.
quite frankly, I think Tony Benn will be rolling in his grave looking at what his rival, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, has done. He has sold the whole party out. It's the whole party, the whole working classes. He has sold them out to the EU.
Do you know, Teng, you just said, I thought myself at about midday today, I wonder what, if Tony Benn was still alive, he would think of one of his protégés, and Corbyn was one of his protégés. I wonder what he'd think. So absolutely, that rings a bell. So Teng, you're a Labour man.
Yes, I am.
You're a Brexiteer.
Yes.
I mean, if this is, as I suspect, the beginning of a total betrayal of Brexit by Labour, because that's what I think they're going, how would you vote at the next election, Teng?
I will still vote for Labour because, I mean, thank God we have Frank Field, we have John Mann, we have Graham Stringer, we have Kate Hoey in this party, and I'm still willing to give them my 100% support for them to continue fighting for the working classes, for the people in the north of England, in Wales, who voted for Brexit. I will still continue to give them my support.
Well, you've just named 4 Labour MPs, none of whom have any position of influence in the Labour Party whatsoever, Teng. But I understand that party loyalties are what they are, and one hangs on to what crumbs of comfort you can find. Teng, I thank you. Teng, I think classic of the caller that I was expecting to find this evening. There are millions of them out there who are Labour voters who may not have spent the last 8 years of their life reading customs union treaties, but they've a feel of the direction that Corbyn has taken Labour in today. Nigel, Corbyn has even checked that the EU would even consider, has he even checked, they consider a cherry-picking type of customs arrangement, says Lynn in Coventry. Well, look, what Brussels will say, and by the way, bear in mind, the customs union only applies to goods. It does not apply to services or financial services, and folks, that's a very important point to hoist on board. So, yeah, what's Monsieur Barnier going to say? He's going to say, great, we can go on selling our wine and our chocolate and our motor cars at a massive, massive surplus to the UK of something like 80 billion euros every single year. They're going to be dancing in the streets in Brussels tonight at what Corbyn said. And then, of course, if Corbyn was in government, they'd say, well, that's really good, Mr. Corbyn, but could we please have a little bit more, because that's how these people behave. Well, it's crystal clear that a vote for Labour would be a vote to remain in the European Union. Well, Philip from Whiteleaf, he did say we'd leave the European Union. He did say he'd respect the vote, which means we'll leave that treaty, but finish up, by the sounds of Keir Starmer yesterday, signing another one. Ultimately, the difference would be just about zip. Tom is a new caller from Sheffield. Tom, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well, and welcome to the programme, Tom.
Thank you very much. I was a Labour voter for Corbyn in the last election.
Yes.
I think he's completely betrayed Brexit, and I think he's brainwashed people. I think that he's getting the young voters on his side by promising things that he can't deliver on, like free uni. I think that the whole point is that we make our own tariffs, make our own laws. I think Corbyn definitely not getting my vote next time.
Tom, can I ask how old you are?
24.
24. And can I ask you, what was the one thing that made you vote for Corbyn?
Probably just university fees.
Right. So he said not only would it be free, but they'd wipe off all existing debt, didn't they?
Yes.
And they now say that's not the case, so that's disappointed you. And I presume, Tom, that you were a Brexit voter, were you?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, right. So you basically, Tom, you've been let down like a cheap pair of braces, haven't you?
Yeah, I think Theresa May, she's not good on the publicity vote, but definitely she's doing a decent job. And people just have to get together and work hard.
OK, so Tom, you are pretty cheesed off by Corbyn today.
Yeah, don't vote Corbyn.
Tom,
thank you very much.
Tom, lovely to hear from you. Thank you. Well, there you are. You know, you may agree or disagree, but this is exactly what I was expecting to find. In the Midlands, in the North, in South Wales, and I picked those three areas. There are many others too, but they're three hotspots of big Labour votes and big Brexit votes, and they're not going to be pleased with the mood music that Corbyn has issued today. On Twitter I'm afraid there are parts of the UK where you could put a red rosette on a pig and they would still vote Labour. Well, under our first-past-the-post system, that is certainly true. Never forget it was a Tory and his party that brought us into this situation in the first place, and the same bunch who have used it to their advantage. Well, yeah, it was the Tory party who took us into the European common market all those years ago. Labour in those days were opposed to it. Leroy is calling from Ramsgate, a new caller to the show. Leroy, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Welcome to the show, Leroy. So what's made you pick the phone up today?
Well, I'm just disgusted with this Corbyn turning his back on the people that voted for him in his country. You know, this open door policy, which they are the ones who let all these people in this country. I've moved out of London because of this. I'm being driven into the sea over these people. I don't understand what his policies are now. He's saying he wants to keep us in the single market, the customs union. We voted to come out of that.
We did.
Was the reason we voted, wasn't it?
We voted. And Leroy, have you normally been a Labour supporter in the past?
My friends, a lot of good friends of mine have been Labour, but they would never, ever vote for Corbyn. Never. Not at all. They wouldn't. He's let everybody down. Everyone.
So has he electorally, Leroy, in your view, has he shot himself in the foot today?
I wish he'd have shot himself in your head.
Well, that's a bit too strong for us, but Leroy from Ramsgate, thank you. Interesting. A lot of people, a lot of Brexit voters, a lot of Labour voters, not happy with what Corbyn's done today. And as a Brexiteer, I'm not happy with what Corbyn's done today. Have to say, Jeremy, you've let down a lot of people. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's 7:30. Labour said they respected Brexit, and yet today they want to sign us up to a customs union. And yes, of course, I'm very critical of that, as have many of the callers been so far tonight, and the texters and tweeters, leading to someone on Twitter saying Nigel Farage has obviously screened every caller. No, I haven't, Scott. I really, really haven't. But I've had people from Sheffield and Durham and elsewhere, Labour members, Labour Party members, saying they feel very disappointed today. So don't be surprised, Scott, because there are at least 4 million of them out there. However, please tell me, as our first caller did today, who told me Corbyn had played a blinder, please tell me he's done the right thing, that manifestos don't really matter. Come and tell me that on 0345 6060 973. But amidst all the negativity and the doom and gloom, it is time for a Brexit business briefing at the end of February here, 2018. The real estate advisor CBRE report London's businesses took up an additional 1 million square feet of office space in November last year, the highest monthly figure since 2004. And other banks too in London are really gaining in confidence. Deutsche Bank have opened up a new London headquarters. Sumitomo Mitsui have signed up for a further 161,000 square feet of the Broadgate development near Liverpool Street. In fact, confidence in the financial services sector helped investment in central London offices swell by 26% last year to 16.4 billion square feet. 81% of this coming from overseas. Meanwhile, that's the city. And so foreign money coming in, taking up more and more office space. What about manufacturing? Well, the Airbus CEO, Tom Enders, confirmed plans to be in the UK long into the future, viewing the UK as a home country and a competitive place to invest. And the Office of National Statistics reported that wages rose by 2.5% in the last 3 months of 2017. Perhaps that's the Brexit effect. I don't know. But all in all, I tell you what, there's quite a lot of really very good news out there. I'm going to go to David, who's calling from Chudley in Devon. David, good evening. Has Corbyn got this right?
I think so, yeah. I don't believe everything that Corbyn says. I have one major concern. I don't know how we're going to deal with Northern Ireland without throwing away the Good Friday Agreement.
OK.
What are we going to do? We're going to have a massive war? How else are you going to stop immigration? And nobody from any political party has ever given me a decent answer to this.
OK, David. Well, and yeah, you're a new caller to the show and welcome. David, at the moment, we have an open border, despite the fact on both sides of it we have different currencies, we have different tax rates, so we already have quite fundamental differences between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Admittedly, if the European Union will not do a common-sense rounded trade deal with us, there will be tariffs. However, David, there are smart ways of doing this. And, you know, if you go to, say, Detroit, very, very close to the Canadian border, there are goods that go back and forth over that bridge there that are subject to tariff. And the way that it works is people have to log in online half an hour or more before what goods they're bringing in, and therefore that tariff gets deducted. The point I'm making, David, is that modern technology means that even with the worst-case scenario of tariff with the Republic, we can deal with it.
Yes, I can understand what you're saying then. I agree, and you're right, that will work. But I'm not sure how it's going to work with immigration.
Well,
the difference between Canada and the USA is, you know, their immigration is not a big problem, and we're worried in this country
yes,
that we're going to have a lot of immigrants coming over from Europe, going to Ireland and walk across the border.
But the difference is, David, and look, when it comes to, you know, no borders in the Schengen zone in Europe, you're quite right that people can just freely go back and forth from France to Germany and Belgium or whatever it is. You're absolutely right. And it's impossible to measure it. There are no mechanisms in place to do so. The difference is that Ireland is an island. Therefore, to get there, you know, you've got to come by plane, you've got to come by sea, you can't simply drive across a border, and that Ireland itself is not part of the Schengen zone, and that anybody getting into Northern Ireland that wanted to, say, come to London would have, again, to register, buy a ticket. So, you know, we've had, David,
Yeah, but they can still get on the ferries in France and come to Ireland without showing your passport, can't you?
Yes. Well, actually, the Irish... No, David, no, you can't, because Ireland is not part of Schengen.
Okay, you can just, like, when I go to Spain on holiday or wherever in Europe, I don't actually show my passport. It doesn't get a stamp, does it? You just flash your red passport and across the border you go. If you go
if you go from Portugal to Spain, you don't even show a passport, let alone have it cleared or registered. But if you're going to Ireland by ferry or going to Ireland by plane from anywhere, your passport actually does get logged. David, look, I do understand the point that you're making, and I agree with the point you're making, that 20 years on from the Good Friday Agreement, things are a damn sight better in Belfast than they were before. And
I totally agree, yeah.
And that's a good thing. And David, nobody in the Republic and nobody in the Unionist community wants us to go backwards on this. Believe me. The only problem I've seen, the people putting up the objections to this are actually Brussels themselves.
Sorry, I missed that. That was
I'm saying the only people I've seen putting up objections to this and saying there's a big problem are Monsieur Barnier and Brussels themselves.
Well, that's because they're in the customs union. If you want to, like Switzerland, for example, isn't in the EU, but it is in the customs union with the UK, with the EU, isn't it?
Look, we've got Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, we've got all sorts of different examples. David, I take the point that Ireland is an issue, but I'm arguing with you that Ireland is not part of Schengen, point number one, so it would be very difficult to see it being a route for mass migration into the United Kingdom. And secondly, we've got technical measures that can and will deal with this issue of goods if they attract tariffs. David, I thank you for your call. Ray says on Facebook, my family have always been Labour, but none will vote Labour again. Matty says Corbyn may want to water down the deal, but surely you can admit he ultimately wants to leave the EU. Matty, that's what he said today. And in many ways, you raise an important point. Provided that we leave the Treaty of Rome at 11 o'clock on March the 29th next year, then history has been changed. And I would accept, even if the deal we get is absolute rubbish, we would be a sovereign country and free to sort out the rest of the argument in many, many years to come. But it would, Matty, be a tremendous loss of opportunity if we were to effectively, by signing up to some form of customs union, to turn our backs on being able to make trade deals with the emerging parts of the world. And bear in mind, folks, 85% of the global economy is outside the Eurozone. It is predicted by the IMF that 90% of world growth in the next 10 years will be outside the European Union. Can we please, for once, just think strategically and long-term? That's my view. Matty is calling from Mansfield, and Michael is calling from Mansfield, and a new caller to the show. Good evening.
Hi, good morning. Good evening, sorry, Nigel. I'm really surprised that you're making some of the points here. I mean, surely a customs union makes sense on every level. The economic view. I mean, if you think of the amount of firms who need components as part of their supply chains to come in from Europe, they don't want to be checking them at the border, do they? They don't need a hard border to check that. And obviously, you could have briefly mentioned that, an island is an issue. We can sort that. No, if you have a hard border in Ireland, that's the end of the Good Friday Agreement.
I wasn't suggesting, Michael, a hard border, was I? I was suggesting a technological border, if we need one.
Yeah, it's still a border, isn't it?
Well, it would be, but I mean, Michael, as I say, we already have a difference of currency, a difference of tax rates. We manage it. It's live and let live. It works. But let me take you back.
Hang on, have you read what the Good Friday Agreement is all about? And the DUP have already made very, very clear that there must not be any variation between the north and the south. That can't happen without an agreed customs union, can it?
Well, the answer, Michael, is very simple. Grow up, Monsieur Barnier. Grow up, Monsieur Barnier. Let's have a free trade agreement, and then this wouldn't even be an issue, would it?
Sorry, Nigel, you're deflecting. Don't try and imply that somehow this is Monsieur Barnier's problem. He's not the one who's left, is he? He's just saying we have a customs union. You're not in Woolworths anymore. You can't do the pick and mix. We'll have that, but we won't have that.
Well, tell Jeremy Corbyn that. Tell Jeremy Corbyn that, because Jeremy Corbyn today has played Woolworths pick and mix, hasn't he?
You're deflecting again. Customs union. If we're going to be part, or if the Irish issue is not going to break it, we have to be part of the customs union, don't we?
No. We don't, because we voted for constitutional change, and actually, Michael, two things happen here with Northern Ireland. One is that we have a free trade agreement anyway, so there would not be any customs or tariffs due.
It's not between the UK now. It's the north and south. It's an officer. You have to have, if you're going to follow what the DP has suggested, well, not suggested, demanded, basically, that there's going to be complete integration, we have to be part of the customs union.
No, we don't.
As that.
No, we don't. We can have a free trade deal, Michael, and if we don't have a free trade deal, we can do this by registration, we can do this by cameras. There are ways round it. But, Michael, you make the point that it's in our economic interest, but would you accept that there are two big downsides of a customs union? One, we have no control over the tariff we charge on, cut flowers coming in from Africa, or food, or bras coming in from, wherever it may be, Vietnam. That's number one. And number two, if we're in a customs union, we are not allowed to negotiate our own arrangements with the 85% of the global economy outside the Eurozone.
Because we do it as part of the EU, don't we, Nigel?
Yeah, and they're really, really bad at it, Michael. They're really, really rotten at it.
Oh, really? But I noticed you were quoting some stats earlier. You're being very selective, weren't you? What's the growth rate, average growth rate across the EU compared to the UK at the moment?
Over the last 10 years, ours has been much higher than theirs. And these things swing around, Michael. Michael, I'll finish up. I will finish up giving you one stat, which is this. South Korea, Chile, Switzerland, countries that make their own trade deals, have got more trade deals with bigger GDPs around the world than we've got. I'm out of time. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC. It's 7:47. So Jeremy Corbyn today changed the Labour policy and said, we will be part of a customs union. I suspect it's the first step to saying we'll also be part of a single market. But after his speech today, LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood managed to catch up with him and got a very, I think, strange response to a very simple question.
Just start by asking, they're going to be the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, who are going to be hopping up and down, going, this is the great Labour Brexit betrayal. What do you say to them?
I would say to them, get a life.
Oh dear.
And stop parading yourselves around the world to set up some kind of xenophobic haven on the shores of Europe that will undercut, remove all regulations, and then do a deal with somebody in the United States in order to further undercut wages and working conditions in this country.
Nobody on the Brexit side ever proposed any of these things. This wasn't about lowering the standards or the wages of working people. It was about making sure we didn't have a massive oversupply in the labour market and people could earn more. I think when you hear Corbyn answering a really sensible question in that way with this ludicrous left-wing rhetoric, you know that actually even he himself was probably embarrassed to have given that speech today because his inner Bennite, I'm afraid, has lost out to the Blairite Parliamentary Labour Party. Patrick is calling from Fyn in Denmark. Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you this evening?
I'm well. I'm just watching. And by the way, Patrick, I'm being critical of Jeremy Corbyn. I'm critical of Theresa May too. They're all just giving ground to Monsieur Barnier, as I see it.
Well, perhaps they're playing devil's advocate. There's very few politicians who are not guilty of that.
Well, all right, fair dues. That may be true. But, Patrick, does it make sense for a Britain that's voted Brexit to be signed up to a customs union?
Nigel, there needs to be some sort of customs union agreement. As with you, I think there are many people who are listening who remember how it was before the customs union was in place. And I was working for a company doing export into Europe. And if you remember the document called a carnet, which actually had to document every single item you had, every single serial number. As you left the UK, you had to prove that everything on the carnet was in your car in case you were going to go to France or Belgium or Germany and buy it. When you got to the other end, you had to prove that everything in the car was on the list in case you sold some stuff while you were there. Using these carnet documents, I was delayed from time to time. I was delayed in some of the Eastern European countries because they couldn't read the document, which was written in English, German and French from memory. And I was asked for bribes on more than one occasion.
Well, I hope we've moved on from there, Patrick, in a sense.
I sincerely hope we have. But my point is this, it was difficult then. Are we going to go back to those bad old days where people trying to do honest business from UK companies have stopped on borders for pointless checks?
Well, hopefully, Patrick, Eastern Europe has now recovered from communism enough so that we can define them as being Western countries, point one. And point two, technology has changed things.
sure technology can help that. If you're going to sort through someone's car and find out what's in it and what isn't in it, no amount of technology is going to do that, because these were items in some cases which weren't on the market.
All right.
Yet, so they wouldn't even have an image of them.
Patrick, I do understand the point you're making, but let me say to you that 85% of the world's economy is outside the Eurozone, and the point of Brexit was to give us the chance to grasp that opportunity, which if we're stuck inside a customs union, we are forbidden from doing.
One more point then.
No, hang on, respond to that.
You've been in business for a long time. I'm responding to it. You've been in business for a long time. What is easier? Maintaining a relationship with an existing customer, or going out into the big world and finding a new one?
Depends whether you want to be, Patrick, a small company or a big company. And if you're a big company, you have to make fundamental changes of attitude and reach out to a bigger marketplace. And I want us to be a massive global player at every level. And I have believed, Patrick, for years that actually membership of the European Union has been holding us back. Patrick, I thank you very much indeed. And Caroline Flint has tweeted, single market membership position is code for not leaving the EU and not ending EU control over freedom of movement. Sounds like the Labour rebellion is growing. Not that Jeremy Corbyn said today they would stay part of a single market, but the Labour position is they want us to be part of the single market during the transition period. And given the ground they've ceded today, I can see them going further. Ian is calling from Middlesex. He's a new caller to the show. He's gone. I've lost him. Ian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Ian. What do you think?
Well, listening to your programme tonight, and I've heard the clips of the speech that Jeremy Corbyn gave.
Yeah.
I might be missing something here, but it's during a transitional period.
So he wants... OK, let's just be clear. During the transition period, he wants us to be a member of the single market. But some have suggested in the Labour Party, not Jeremy Corbyn, but some senior figures have suggested that might become permanent. What Corbyn has said now today is even after the transition period, he wants us to be a member of a customs union.
Right, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, now that's exactly what he was saying today. And what I'm saying, Ian, is that they're actually moving further and further and further towards a position where even if we left the European Union, frankly, the position would be almost no different to when we were members.
Well, do you think that if we just said we're leaving and that's it? Do you think if we do that without trying to strike out something that we get a few of our fingers in the European pie, that is the best thing to do?
I think, Ian, the best thing to do is to negotiate, is to be grown up, is to try and get a tariff-free deal with the European Union. But if they're going to play silly so-and-sos, it's best we just break away, do our own thing, recognise that we can actually become... Do you know, I was watching Countryfile last night. Do you know 1,000 abattoirs in this country have closed? In the last 20 years, 1,000 abattoirs have closed because of EU meat hygiene directives, closing down all the small abattoirs and actually making conditions for animals worse in this country. Ian, I want us to be free to deal with issues like that.
Right, OK then. Now, before you go, I know you're a busy man, when you said about... what is it, when they lie during what they say they're going to do in power?
Yep.
Call me a cynic, but I thought most political parties done that.
Ian, he's not the first to do a U-turn. You're dead right. And I get the last message. I'm 65 years old. I have voted Labour all my life. No, never again, says Leo. I'm very angry. Well, you've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Coming up at 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.